Verdict Watch, Day 3. The woman who came before Jodi, the woman who made her jealous. Friends say she was Travis Alexander's first true love and knew Travis better than anybody. Deanna Reid is here with us, her first interview since she was on the stand. She's got stories you'll hear that the jury did not. All right, good evening, everybody. My co-host this week is HLN's Christy Paul, author of Love Isn't Supposed to Hurt. Jodi Arias' jury has been at it for 13 and a half hours now. Coming up, we've got the woman who is Travis Alexander's first true love. But first, Jodi's Twitter account has been active these days. One tweet, in fact, caught our eye. Here it is, guys. Says, I wanted so much to avoid trial, but the state forced it. My only other option was suicide. And, well, my question here is, all this threat of suicide, Christy, we know that borderlines do a lot of that, but Jodi seems to do it for a particular effect. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I think, you know, I've been watching a lot of people on Twitter and Facebook, and I think everything she says just seems to be completely self-serving. And she's got that characteristic of blaming everybody else as opposed to taking any sort of ownership herself. Right. And that is really disturbing to me. And
her point of view begs no alternative. But is the suicide issue something we should be really paying attention to? Take a look at this.
I said, just stop talking to her, just stop calling her. And he said, you don't understand. She said she's going to kill herself. And I said, she's not going to kill herself. And he said, no. He says, you can't guarantee that, and I can't live with myself if she does.
Throughout the fall, I had been feeling suicidal. I called my friend Matt because he had guns, and I was going to ask him if I could borrow one because I wanted to kill myself.
Was your goal to go to prison?
Not a physical prison on earth, no. I was trying to kill myself.
You nicked yourself and it hurt, right?
Yes.
And I think the word that you used, stung, right?
Yes.
To use your standard, ma'am, of how you stopped because it stung, can you imagine how much it must have hurt Mr. Alexander when you stuck that knife right into his chest? That really must have hurt, right? When you were being asked about whether or not a jury would convict you, you said, well, the reason I said that was because I planned to be dead at the time, right?
That's right.
What happened to the suicide letters you wrote to your grandmother?
I mailed them to my grandmother, and I asked her to hold them.
She also meets criteria C7, which is a sense of foreshortened future. She was thinking about suicide for the longest period of time.
She could have gone down the hallway, right?
Yes.
And then you could have taken a quick left and you would have been down the stairs, right?
No, I probably would have been dead.
Well, ma'am, you could have done that, couldn't you?
Not unless I was suicidal.
Well,
I don't know if anybody else is having the reaction watching this tape. Christy, how about you? When you string together all this gratuitous suicidal thinking, it's almost like life has no importance to her, and maybe that's why she could extinguish somebody else's life without seeming to give a damn.
Yes, very much. She seems so disconnected to what death really is. And the one thing, even listening to all that, the one thing I can't get out of my head that we saw in the interrogation tapes was when she was so adamant that she wasn't there, and she said, if I killed Travis Alexander, I would beg for the death penalty. But she is not, as we know, begging for the death penalty.
She is not begging, though she may do it herself because she's the one allowed to kill people, including herself. Beth Karras, HLN legal correspondent, has been covering the trial. Beth, I wonder, has the Sheriff's Department taken precautions to prevent Jodi from killing herself? Is she on any kind of a suicide watch?
No, she's not on any kind of a suicide watch. I did end up speaking with the Sheriff's Department public information officer, but only very briefly before I had to sit down, so I didn't get the full story. But she's not on suicide watch. She has access to things that other inmates do. So I suppose if she, you know, if she were really creative, she could figure out a way to kill herself. I mean, she has pencils and she has her clothing, but you know, they don't have belts, so they can't easily hang themselves. And she's not alone in herself, so it's not like she could do something that, you know, others presumably would prevent it, you know, so if she were to try to hang herself some way. So she, you know, and they can be very creative. We know the Craigslist killer figured out a way to cover his ankles and his wrists, which he had cut with plastic bags, so he would bleed into them and he wouldn't be discovered, and he cut himself in strategic places. He was a medical student, and so he was able to do it with things that inmates have access to. So it's possible, but she's not on any special watch. If they knew it, though, she'd be in a room probably naked with nothing.
And I guess it sort of belies a bias that she has, which is, he had it coming, and nobody's going to convict me. I bet you she's still confident. I bet you.
Well, yeah, and maybe with every passing day, a little more confident. But in that tweet where she says suicide, and she says the state forced me, she offered to plead guilty to second-degree murder, maximum 22 years. She forced herself to go to trial because she killed him.
All right, thanks, Beth. Joining us, Janine Driver, human lie detector, author of You Can't Lie to Me. Attorney Mark Eiglarsh from SpeakToMark.com. Seems that the fog has cleared in his studio. Attorney Lonnie Coombs, author of You're Perfect and Other Lies Parents Tell. Juan Martinez asked Jodi why she didn't just run down the hallway and the stairs to get away from Travis. I think it's because he was running away. She was chasing after him with a knife, but she said it was because she didn't want to die. Mark, why didn't somebody zero in on that remark? She was saying, I didn't run away. Wait, I didn't do that because I didn't want to die. How did she know she didn't want to die? She was in the fog, right?
That's correct. And she reached for a gun that she thought was probably unloaded. Listen, so much doesn't make sense. And let's go back to that suicide thing. Jodi Arias is not going to kill herself. The most that she'll do is make it appear like she attempted it so that she'll get some sympathy. And part of the reason, other than being the borderline that you've discussed, is that in jail, she is Queen of Zamunda. There are actual abuse victims in there who know what abuse is, and they think erroneously that maybe she has been abused. So they feel for her. And with Prisoner Idol coming up, she's a star. She loves it in there. She does.
I don't know the Queen of Zamunda personally. In fact, I've never heard of her before tonight. But Janine, do you think she's actually sort of got stature in prison?
I know that she does. I've spoken to producers from your show that have spoken with people from the prisons, from other shows as well. They've literally gone out for drinks with people that were in jail with Jodi. And she's an idol. So I think that Mark is not only cheeky and funny tonight, bringing his A game, but he's dead on. She is looked at, and people write to me all the time asking me, I'm not a psychologist, why do people love her? You know, is it because she has a chance of getting away with something they wish they could get away with? Or is it because bad people who do bad things like other bad people who do bad things? I don't, Dr. Drew, what's your thought on that?
Well, I think it's the same as women that get very infatuated with men that are incarcerated. I think I've got a cameraman that's interested in Jodi. We got one right here. People. Come on. No, we do. Mark, come on camera here. No, go ahead, Christy. Go ahead. Or Lonnie.
Dr. Drew, remember, in jail, she is a celebrity, like they're saying. She is a celebrity. People know that people are watching her on TV. They're watching every move she makes all day long. There's coverage of her. So anybody that can get near to her has touched the celebrity. It can go out, and now they're more important because they've had that contact.
No, I think that's right. I think this is the sickness of our society, is because somebody's on TV, because somebody has celebrity, they're important. We got to get near them. It's called basking in the narcissistic glow. I'm not so sure. I think there's a spectrum of why people get infatuated with people that are in this situation. Oftentimes, people have been injured themselves, feel like they have a special understanding of somebody like Jodi. They believe her nonsense. It starts with believing her. If you believe her, sure, you could get sort of infatuated, and poor thing, but the fact is, she doesn't tell the truth. Now, let's talk about Nurmi. Speaking of not telling the truth, he tried to get off the case a couple times because of her manipulations and because of her just complete lack of understanding, of appreciation of being factual in the truth. We found a handwritten letter from Jodi to the judge in 2011. Here it is. My first chair attorney, Kirk Nurmi, has submitted a motion to withdraw. I'm finding it difficult to express just how important I feel it is that he remains my attorney. Lonnie, why does he have to stay her attorney just because she wants that?
You know, this is really fascinating, this relationship between Nurmi and Jodi. In Arizona, once a case is set for trial, and it was set for trial at this point in August of 2011, the defense attorney cannot get off the case unless another defense attorney has come up and said, one, I'm willing to take the case, and two, I will be ready to go to trial on the date that's already set. When Nurmi made his motion to get off this trial, there was no other attorney that was willing to step up and say that. And so the judge said, no, you can't get off the case. We want this case to go to trial. Then they had Jodi pushing so hard, saying, I want him, I need him. And it was so interesting. The harder he tried, because he brought this motion more than once, the harder he tried to get away from Jodi, the more she clung to him, almost Travis-like, I don't want you to get away. I want to be able to manipulate and control you,
Mark,
and you're trying to get away from me.
I know that feeling. I moved to withdraw on one case several times. It was a federal case. I was forced to go to trial with this guy who I just couldn't stand, who had a record dating back to the disco crisis. I couldn't stand this guy. I had to go to trial. And so let me just say this. I admire Nurmi on some level. Obviously, I don't like his client. I don't like anything she stands for. But to be forced and to try a case and give all that you can for someone you cannot stand so that the system works, which is what you would want from your own defense lawyer, I do give him credit for that.
All right, fair enough. Thank you, guys. Next up, Travis Alexander's first true love, maybe his only true love, his ex-girlfriend Deanna Reid, in her first interview since she had been on the witness stand. She'll be here with us. Welcome back. I'm here with my co-host tonight, HLN's Christy Paul, and we have something very, very important coming up, a first-time interview with a key player in Travis's life. Joining us as well, Sirius XM radio host and attorney Jenny Hutt. Also staying with us, Mark Eiglarsh, attorney, and the woman who was Travis Alexander's first true love, Deanna Reid. She testified against Jodi in the trial. Jodi's defense attorney, well, they were awful to her. Take a look at this.
Were you instructed to act a certain way with Travis when Miss Reid was present?
Yes.
How was that?
He warned me that she was emotionally unstable and that she would freak out if she saw him with other girls.
The state says, well, he didn't abuse Deanna Reid. He didn't abuse, and I would suggest, even though they say that, I think that's probably not completely accurate, because while they had some consensual sex, it was going against their religion, and I'm sure that was damaging to both of them. Sure, Jodi lied, but Travis Alexander lied as well, too, didn't he? Not only we heard Deanna Reid talk about how he lied about having sex, he would lie by omission.
Deanna, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing also some really lovely photographs. We'll be playing them alongside of our discussion here. Now, when you guys look so happy together, really it gets heartbreaking to look at you guys in these photos. I am so sorry you had to go through this. I can just let me just I have to sort of speak from my heart to you, my dear. You know, I've read that Travis did a lot. He trusted you with so much. I mean, I feel like you were really a part of him. I feel like Chris Hughes and you really, and Sky also, really knew this man. And then you had to get through this mudslinging in the court where they were really just, I mean, we played some easy stuff here. You were made to feel terrible. How do you feel now? Where are you at? How do you process all this? Where are you?
I'm doing good. I feel good about getting on the stand and standing up for Travis and just telling it like it is and telling the truth about him. So I'm glad that I was able to do it. I knew it was an important thing for me to do, and so I'm glad that I had the chance to. And I knew that they would say something that was, you know, inappropriate. Like I knew what was coming, so I was ready for it.
Oh, good. I'm glad they didn't hurt you, but you've been sort of hurt enough by Jodi. And now Travis used to say that whoever married him would have to get used to you being around. You're going to be in his life forever. And yet, you know, he really, you connected to him. You're a reflection of him. Where'd Jodi come from? What are your thoughts on that? You two couldn't be more different.
You know, I don't know. I think it was just one of those things where she was throwing herself at him and he liked the attention, and that's, you know, that's where it came from. I
understand you had a kind of interesting experience with Jodi where you went to, he asked you to check up on the dog or something, and you went in there and lo and behold, there's Jodi in his house. Could you tell us that story?
Yes. Yeah, I lived about an hour away from Travis at the time, and he just asked me, please go check on Napoleon because you know, my roommates are in and out. They're not really watching him. I just want to make sure that he has food and that he's okay. And so I gladly went. I love that dog, so I went to go check up on him. And when I did, there was no cars there. It looked like nobody was home, and I used my key to get in the house. And I came in and I smelt that there were cookies baking. And I thought that was kind of odd. And then I walked in, and as I get towards the kitchen and the living room, I see Jodi. She's sitting on the couch with Travis's laptop. And she comes up when she sees me. You know, she gets up right away, and there's some cookies in the oven, and then there's a tray of cookies on the counter, and she grabs the tray, and she comes over to me, and she says, like, total Stepford wife is what it was like. And she comes up, do you want a cookie? Oof. Yeah, completely like that. And so she offers me a cookie, and I was just, at this point, I kind of knew about what was going on with the slashing tires. I didn't know for sure it was her. I didn't want to believe that it was, but I knew some stuff, some stalking behaviors were going on.
Well, and there
Travis.
she is.
And so.
And there she is in his house.
Yeah, and there she is.
She broke it into his house, and you knew she wasn't supposed to be there. I want to interrupt just for a second, give my panel a chance to ask you questions. They're all been very anxious to speak with you. Jenny Hudd, I'm going to start with you. Jenny, what would you like to ask?
Well, I just wanted to ask, do you think that all the ridiculous, first of all, I'm sorry about how you were treated on the stand. Yeah. I was so fired up and so angry about it. So I'm sorry that you were put through that. I'm sorry about Travis. But do you feel like all the talk about sex and the sex tape has taken away from what really matters in this trial, which is the fact that Jodi is a disgusting, ravaging, crazo murderer, that she murdered Travis?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That's not what this trial is about. It's about my friend being murdered.
Yeah, right.
And
Mark.
I hate that they keep bringing up all these other aspects of what happened.
Mark, you've been saying that from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm only smiling because Jenny always holds back how she truly feels. You know, let it out, Jen. Actually, Deanna, I wanted to ask you. First of all, I admired you while you were testifying. I mean, you were being asked some very detailed questions about your sex life, and I'm wondering what you kept telling yourself so that you wouldn't react. I want to know where you got that lack of reaction, which actually made you a lot more credible, at least here in the court of public opinion.
Well, I knew that I had to be that way. I knew that the defense wanted me to react. That's what Jodi wanted. She wanted to embarrass me. She wanted me to be humiliated. And so I just kept telling myself that I'm not going to give her what she wants. And I'm going to stand up for myself, and I'm just going to tell it like it is, and it's the truth. And so I did it. I told the truth, and I'm okay with it.
Christy, I want to give you the last word here. Go ahead.
Well, you know, we were seeing the pictures of the dog, and as I understand it, he left the dog to you in his will, and Jodi, that was even a point of contention for her, wasn't it?
Yeah, people were saying, I remember soon after Travis died, that people were saying that Jodi was trying to tell people around and see what was happening with Napoleon, because she was saying that Travis wanted her to have Napoleon if he ever died. And so that was, you know, false, obviously, and he had left Napoleon to me in his will, and he had left me his library, what he called it. He just had so many books. And I remember, because of prepaid, he had to get a will done. Well, he didn't have to, but it was just one of those things that they promote doing your will. Because that's something that comes with that membership that he was selling. And so when he did the will, he called me afterwards and he told me, I did my will, and I'm giving Napoleon to you, and I'm giving you my library, and everything else, just all my material things in my house, that's all going to my grandma. But
it seems like
the
you still
things
get
that are
emotional.
important to me.
You still get emotional when you hear.
Yeah, that's one of the conversations that I really remember having with him, because it's hard for me to remember everything and go back and think about things, but that's one of those conversations that I really remember, because he said specifically, like, I trust you. I know that you'll take care of the things that are important to me.
Okay, we have a lot more.
And so that's
a lot more for Deanna. Hang on, my dear. A lot more coming up with Deanna.
I went back to the front door and rang the doorbell.
Okay. And who answered the door?
Travis and Napoleon.
Okay. And Napoleon is his dog, right?
Do you know whether or not he had a pet?
Yes, he has a dog named Napoleon.
And who has that dog now?
I have that dog.
Back with my panel, and we've been joined by Deanna Reid. Deanna, this is her first time speaking since having been on the stand there. We've been seeing alongside of our conversation here the cute pictures of the dog. And Deanna, I want to take you back to the issue with the will. I mean, that speaks so loud to me about how Travis felt about you. There's the cute dog we're looking at, and you with him. This dog he loved, he trusted you with the dog. His books he loved, he trusted you with the books. Jodi took this man.
Yeah, we trusted each
other. And Jodi took this man away from you.
We trusted each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jodi took this man away. I'm almost at a loss for words. I mean, how do you how do you not want to wring her neck yourself?
I do. I can't understand why she would do this. I can't wrap my head around it. Like, I don't know what would have made her get to that point of doing that. Why couldn't she have just moved on with her life? Like, it would have been so easy for her to just move on. It hurts. It hurts me that she did, obviously, that she did this, but that it's just the way she did it, just everything about it. It's so confusing to me and hard for me to understand, and that's part of the hurt, is just trying to figure out why when there really isn't an explanation, and I'll never get an answer to why.
Jenny Hutt, go ahead.
Yeah, well, number one, I wanted to speak to what Dr. Drew was saying before about his giving you his stuff and his will. I think Travis loved you. I think that was real, that was love.
Yes.
And I wonder if you think, Deanna, that had things not turned out this way, had there not been this homicidal maniac named Jodi, that there might have been a future with Travis, even though you guys were apart.
For us, romantically, no. And I know that now. And I knew at the time when we broke up, like, it was over for us in that sense. We were still friends. We were friends before we started dating, and we remained friends after too. And I loved him. He was an important part of my everyday life. And one of the things too, that they bring up his childhood a lot, and how the way he was raised, that caused issues and made him abusive towards Jodi. And that's not true. He did have some issues from his childhood growing up, but those issues were issues of commitment and allowing someone to love him. And so I think that really was the issue that he had, and not being abusive. He didn't get that from his upbringing. What he got was the issues with commitment and being able to feel maybe like he deserved love from someone.
And that fits, and that really fits with his history. Christy, I wonder if we should ask Deanna the question you asked last night about what she thinks he would want.
Yeah, I mean, well, there were two things I wanted to ask. One was, how did you prepare yourself to be in the same room with Jodi? Because that had to be so hard to sit on the stand knowing she was sitting there scrutinizing everything you said. And two, you know, we've heard so much from Chris and Skye talking about what a compassionate man he was and how he didn't want, he fought so hard not to hurt her. How do you think he would feel right now? What do you think he would want to happen to her now?
That's another thing that makes me so sad, is that he was so compassionate. He always gave people the benefit of the doubt. He didn't want to believe that there was so much evil in someone that they could do this. And I know that he wanted to help her. I know that he would have wanted to, you know, just not be that person who she's trying to say that he is. And as far as what he would want to happen to her now. I'm not sure. All that I know is that if this had happened to one of his friends, if Jodi had killed a friend of his, he would have wanted her to have the death penalty.
Okay, that speaks volumes. And I really do feel like you know this man, so we will assume that would be Travis's point of view. Mark, go ahead. What do you got for Deanna?
You know, Deanna, the more I get to know you, the more I see how opposite you are from Jodi.
Yeah.
My question is, what was it about Travis that caused him not to want to embrace the warning signs when Chris and Skye say, look, you got to stay away from this girl. She is not what you think. He resisted it. What is it about his character that caused him to want to stay with her? What do you think?
It's like I was saying before, he wanted to give people the benefit of the doubt. He wanted to see the good in people. And so he would ignore those bad things and just look at the good things. Plus, she was giving him tons of attention. And I think that he liked that, and that he liked the attention that he was getting from her. So I think that's part of the reason why he stayed with her.
And Deanna, I think you're zeroing in on his inability to commit and receive love is really a key thing here. When people have been traumatized like he was, they confuse intensity for love, they confuse sex for love, they sort of gap through their difficulty accepting love with physicalities and things, and that's exactly what she took advantage of. Well, Deanna, I just want to thank you from all. Go ahead. I'll give you the last word here, and I want to thank you for joining us. But go right ahead. What would you like to say, finishing up here?
Just on that note, it just makes me, again, it just breaks my heart, because I think that eventually he would have got to that point. I think that he would have been able to find love and get married and have a family, but she took that away from him.
She took everything away from Deanna, and I think with friends like you in his life, I think there's no doubt he would have gotten there. All right, my dear, thank you for joining us. Thank you also to my panel. My jury weighs in on what has been taking so long, what they've been absorbing in the courthouse. Jurors here with HLN's Christy Paul, and joining us from outside the courthouse, my jurors, Katie Wick and Stacey Farrington. Stacey, I'm going to start with you tonight. Do you think there's someone holding up this verdict? Is there one person or more?
You know, I actually think that could be the dynamic of what's going on. I think this group looks, you know, when they go on their breaks, they have seemed like they're kind of together. Now, they take them out in little groups today, and they're always accompanied. But, I mean, even today, you had these little groups that were telling stories and kind of, you know, talking personal life as they came and went. But there is one that I did notice at the end of the day, as they all came out, that kind of just held back a little. And he's kind of the younger guy that sits in the front. And, you know, I couldn't help but wonder, not that I necessarily think he might be the holdout, but for all the jurors, I think he might be the one that's thinking, let's get this going. But there is one guy that kind of sticks to himself a little, and he's kind of the older guy in the front. And he's the one that I think, you know, maybe he has maybe a few more questions or some reservations. His interaction with the jurors is just kind of a little bit different than from the rest of them. So I don't know that I want to say, like, I think he's the holdout, but maybe he's the one that's, you know, maybe having a harder time, or maybe they're explaining a little bit more. You never know. Also, it could be that they're just going over everything. Right. It could be they're going over things very, very carefully. Katie, your thoughts on this? And that guy that Stacey's referencing, did he seem to have a connection with Jodi in the courtroom?
No, I didn't see any connection with Jodi at all in the courtroom, frankly, Dr. Drew. But actually, I think they're just doing their job. I think they're being thorough. I think perhaps they've seen the Casey Anthony trial and they saw what happened with the jurors in that case. They're doing their job. There's a lot of evidence that these jurors have to go through, and I'm not concerned, Dr. Drew. I think if it gets into Friday, next Monday, I'll start getting a little concerned. I'm not concerned right now, and think they have their notes that they have to go through as well. They haven't been able to talk as we have been able to talk these 4 months about this case. Perhaps they spent 3 or 4 hours talking about the case. I'm not concerned yet. I think they're just doing their job, and they're being very diligent. All right, guys, thank you for that report. Tomorrow night, if Travis Alexander thought his life was about to end, what would be his last words? Believe it or not, we think we have it on tape. The exclusive video you'll see only here tomorrow night at 9. See you next time.